I spent $20,000 on a family vacation to Bali. Sun, temples, the whole dreamy montage playing in my head like a travel ad. Weeks of picturing my grandkids racing the tide on Kuta Beach, imagining long dinners under lanterns while the ocean breathed in and out beside us. That was the movie I'd been watching in my mind. Then the audio snapped and a different line cut through the noise of JFK Terminal 4 like a box cutter. "Dad, I forgot to buy your ticket. You should just go home." Derek didn't even look at me when he said it. He said it to the departure board, to the scrolling list of flights that meant more to him in that second than I did. Behind him, travelers hustled by with wheeled carry-ons and neck pillows, the smell of coffee and jet fuel mixing into that particular perfume of an international terminal. Singapore Airlines counters glowed ahead, sleek, efficient, the logo promising immaculate service to places you can only point to on a map if you've ever dreamed out loud. We were supposed to connect in Singapore, then hop down to Denpasar. We, as in family. We, as in the plan. What kind of bad news? I asked, though my stomach already knew. It was pinched so tight it felt like a fist. Dad, I forgot to buy yours. Derek's hands stayed in his pockets. His jaw moved like he was chewing through excuses he couldn't swallow. You forgot? I heard my voice and hated how small it sounded. We've been planning this since June, I know. It's just, work's been insane and coordinating the kids, and he finally glanced at his watch, like the time would save him. I gave you $20,000, I said. The number fell out of my mouth like a tool I could no longer grip. For everyone. For all of us. Yeah, we're grateful, Dad. He said it like a line he'd rehearsed in the shower. Lena and the kids, Ava with her unicorn backpack, Noah balancing on the metal stanchion, were already drifting toward the security entrance. My sister Ruth and her husband Ben hovered nearby, pretending not to listen. The departure board flicked. Our flight SQ-25 showed final call in urgent red. Everything inside me said this was fixable. Had to be. I pulled my suitcase and went straight to the counter. "Excuse me," I told the agent in the crisp Navy uniform. "Can you check flights to Denpasar?" "Bali. Today, please." "Of course, sir. Do you have a booking reference?" Her smile was airline perfect, the kind that floats on top of bad news like a lily on a pond. "Name's Martin Reyes," I said. "But there's an issue. My reservation might be missing." Her fingers flew over the keyboard. "I'm not seeing a ticket issued for a Martin Reyes on Singapore Airlines. Are you sure it was booked with us?" "It has to be. My family's on your flight." "I do see a reservation for Derek Reyes, party of 4, she said, after another burst of typing. 2 adults, 2 children, departing at 6:05 p.m. "Check again," I said. "It should be 5. "It was supposed to be 5. "I've checked twice, sir." Her smile thinned. "We're fully booked tonight. There's a conference in Bali, and seats are very tight this week." Derek's hand landed on my elbow like a clamp. "Dad, we need to talk." "Not now," I said, shaking him off. "We'll pay for a seat. First class, business, cargo for all I care. Just get me there tomorrow." I turned back to the agent. "Anything tomorrow?" She scanned, her kindness edging toward pity. "Stand by only tomorrow and the next day. The earliest confirmed seat I'm seeing would get you in late next Thursday. It's quite expensive without advance purchase." "How expensive?" "About $2,100 one way. I'll pay it." "Dad." Derek's voice hardened, the steel finally poking through. No, the word was flat. Final, like a door closing. "What do you mean, no?" My suitcase wobbled and tipped, the handle clicking down as if it were embarrassed for me. "Shall we find another route? LAX, Tokyo, Manila, I don't care." He checked his watch again, more theatrically this time. "You need to go home, Dad. We'll manage the vacation." Manage. As if I were a leak he needed to contain. As if my presence were a variable that threatened his spreadsheet. After I paid for the hotel, the tours, the driver, "Please don't make a scene," he said, eyes flicking toward the people watching us now. "We'll call you from the resort." I saw it finally. Not panic, not shame, relief. He was relieved I was off the manifest. Relieved the last obstacle to whatever he'd planned had removed itself politely, with a rolling suitcase and a father's trusting heart. He turned and walked toward security, Lena herding Ava and Noah through the line, Ruth looking anywhere but at me. They merged into the stream of travelers, swallowed by the chrome throat of TSA. The counter agent's voice threaded into the silence they left behind. "Sir, were you able to sort it out with your family?" "Can you tell me?" I asked, keeping my voice level with effort. When that reservation for Derek Reyes was made, she hesitated. I'm not supposed to disclose booking details. Please, her fingers tapped. It shows ticketed 7 weeks ago. Party of 4. No changes since. 7 weeks. Not last weekend when he told me he was finalizing. Not 3 months ago when we circled dates on the calendar and talked about feeding fish from a glass-bottom boat. 7 weeks ago he sealed it. 2 adults, 2 kids. No room for the old man who bankrolled the dream. The overhead speakers popped. Singapore Airlines Flight 25 to Singapore is now closed for boarding. The words floated over me like a benediction delivered to the wrong congregation. My phone buzzed, a text from Derek. Sorry about mix-up. We'll call from hotel. Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. Like I was a cat he'd left with extra kibble and a note for the neighbor. The agent offered me the last olive branch left in her garden. There is a red-eye on a partner airline with 2 stops. It would get you into Denpasar Thursday afternoon. I looked past her to the glass, where you can just make out the shape of a gate. The last stragglers hustling down a jet bridge to a place I'd paid for, but wasn't invited to see. No, I said. Thank you. But no. Out past the automatic doors, New York slapped me with its early November cold. The taxi line was longer than it should have been for a Tuesday, but I welcomed the delay. It gave my anger time to cool into shape. Hard edges, clean lines. I don't do well with molten rage. That's Derek's element. Mine is structure. I spent 42 years as an engineer, building things that don't fall down. Today something collapsed. Time to start drafting what replaces it. Where to? The driver asked as I slid into the back. Forest Hills, I said. Austin Street. The habit of precision never left me. He glanced at me in the mirror as we pulled away. Rough day? Rough enough. Family, he guessed. Bullseye. I watched the curve of the Van Wyck flash by, taillights smearing into red ribbons. Ever have yours turn on you? He huffed a laugh without mirth. Brother, I got 2 cousins who could run coups in small countries. Family knows where to stick the knife. There it was, the perfect sentence for the file I was opening in my head. We drove in companionable silence, past brick towers and billboards, promising miracle rates. I replayed the last few months like a surveillance tape. Derek insisting on handling all bookings so it's streamlined. Lena chirping about Grandpa maybe preferring a quieter boutique hotel because kids can be loud. Ruth suggesting I might sit out snorkeling because the currents are tricky. For older knees. All of it sounded harmless, then considerate even. But it was choreography. They'd been inching me toward the wing so long I didn't notice when the spotlight moved. My phone buzzed again. Lena this time. So sorry about the confusion, Mr. Reyes. We'll bring you back something from the markets. A seashell instead of a chair at the table I'd paid to reserve. The cab rolled up to my building, just as the light faded to that bruised purple Queens does so well. 49 even, the driver said. I handed him 60. Keep the change. He nodded, met my eyes in the mirror. Whatever you're about to do, make sure it sticks. I plan to. The lock on my apartment door clicked with its familiar, comforting thunk. Inside, everything was exactly where I had left it that morning. When I'd left for an airport I thought would take me west, then south, then to a beach with my name etched into the evening. The suitcase grumbled over the threshold like it was ashamed of the short trip. I changed out of the airport clothes. I'd chosen with the grandkids in mind. A soft blue polo, Ava once said, made my eyes look ocean-colored, and into my old grey cardigan and cotton pants. Derek calls it my professor costume. Tonight the professor had homework. The desk lamp in my study pooled light over the walnut surface I'd refinished the winter after my wife, Elena, passed. The folder labeled Bali 2025 lay where I'd left it, tabbed and tidy because that's who I am when no one's treating me like luggage. I opened it and fanned the contents into neat rows, invoices, screenshots, a printed bank transfer for $20,000 to Derek Reyes, memo line, family trip. Behind the paper, behind the polite texts, behind the softness I cultivated so my family would keep coming around for Sunday dinners, something harder uncoiled its spine. They made a calculation about me. They decided I would be quiet, embarrassed, compliant. They bet on the part of me that doesn't like scenes. They bet wrong. I reached for the landline Elena insisted I keep for real calls. The dial tone felt old-fashioned and honest in my ear. I didn't dial Derek, or Lena, or Ruth. I dialed information, asked for the number of the resort in Ubud. Derek had bragged about snagging at a killer rate. The clerk answered with a warm smile I could hear. I introduced myself, confirmed what I needed to confirm, and started asking the kind of questions an engineer asks when he's building something meant to last. Blueprints, I reminded myself as I took notes. Not fireworks. They'll see the light soon enough. The Ubud Resorts line rang twice before a woman answered with a lilting cadence that sounded like sunlight through palm leaves. Selamat sore. Tuata Orchid Resort reservations. This is Kamang speaking. Good afternoon, I said. My name is Martin Reyes. I need to discuss a reservation under Derek Reyes, group of 4. There was a polite pause while Keys whispered. Yes, I see the booking, Mr. Reyes. 2 connecting suites, 10 nights. Check in tomorrow. Lovely choice. Our breakfast terrace faces the rice fields. Can you confirm the guest names on the booking? I asked. Pen hovering above the legal pad I'd slid under the desk lamp. Certainly. Derek Reyes, Lena Reyes, Ava Reyes, and Noah Reyes. No 5th. No space where a grandfather should be. A spotless absence and the form of payment. Deposit was wired 7 weeks ago, she said. Remaining balance to be settled at check-in by primary guest. The deposit was... How much? 8 million rupiah, she said, and then translated helpfully. Approximately $520. We honor an agency promotion. A promotion. So my $20,000 hadn't even gone directly here. It had been funneled, portioned, reassigned. In the engineering world, we call this a load path, where forces really go. I'd just found one. One more question, I said. If the primary booking party requests cancellation this evening, can you note the exact local time and who authorized it? Another small pause, the kind people take when they sense a hinge turning. Yes, sir. We keep precise logs. Then please cancel the reservation, I said, and felt my own voice surprise me with how steady it sounded. This is the primary booking party authorizing. Martin Reyes, note the time. Send the confirmation to this email. Komang's tone stayed gentle, professional. There will be a penalty for canceling within 24 hours of arrival. How much? $300. Proceed, I said, and thank you for your help. When I hung up, the apartment seemed to exhale with me. A small clean click in the dark cause effect. Not fireworks. Fixtures. Elena's photograph watched from the bookshelf. Her chin tipped like she was about to disagree with me, eyes bright with the stubborn joy she wore like jewelry. Sometimes, she used to say when Derek was a teenager with knives for words, you have to let the floor drop out once so he learns about gravity. I poured tea I wouldn't have needed if Bali had gone the way I'd dreamed and sat at the desk while the confirmation pinged into my inbox. The timestamp glowed. I printed it, slid it beneath the wire clip with the bank transfer and the notes from Singapore Airlines. Paper has a weight that makes decisions real. Sleep came fast and flat that night, the way it does after you've lifted something heavy you were afraid you couldn't. No dreams, just cool dark. In the morning, I let the kettle sing before I checked my phone. It pulsed like a trapped insect. 27 missed calls, 14 voicemails, a river of text that told the story without my needing to listen. Dad call now. Hotel says no rooms. What did you do? This isn't funny. Kids are crying. Fix it. I set the phone face down and buttered toast. The tea was perfect, black, honest. When I finally picked the phone up, I didn't call Derek. I called my notebook. I drew a line down the center of a clean page, write said on the left and meant on the right. It's an old habit from design reviews. Separate signal from noise. The phone buzzed again. Lena's name. I let it go to voicemail, then listened. Mr. Reyes, it's Lena. We're at the airport hotel. The kids don't understand. This isn't you. Please call Derek, please. I wrote it down in the columns because writing is how I refuse to drown. Said, this isn't you. Meant, we thought you'd stay soft. I called Derek. He answered before the first ring finished. What did you do? Good morning to you too, I said. Did you make your connection in Changi? This isn't a joke, he said so loud I held the phone away. Behind him I could hear the clatter of a lobby, a child whining, Lena's voice trying to braid calm out of air. The resort says the booking was cancelled by you at midnight New York time. They're full. Everywhere's full. Do you have any idea what you've done? I have an excellent idea, I said, pen poised. When you planned to leave me at JFK last night, where exactly did you picture me sleeping? On the air train. So that was a misunderstanding, he said. I told you things got complicated. Said, was misunderstanding, I wrote. Meant we're only sorry it hurt us, won't Dad focus. We have 2 kids. They're melting down. This is cruel. Cruel, I repeated. Like telling your father to just go home after he funded your trip. That's not the same thing. Explain the difference. Silence, then the ambient clink of ceramic cups. I pictured him at a low table under a philodendron mural, phone crushed to his ear, hair a mess, the first real crack in his voice showing. We put everything on cards expecting to settle at check-in, he said finally, and I heard the words for what they were: admission. We can't just move to a different resort. We don't have that kind of liquidity right now. We thought this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. To spend my money without me, I said. Stop making this about you, he snapped. Ava hasn't stopped crying. I made another note, said, stop making this about you. Meant we only care now that we're uncomfortable. You told me to take care of myself, I said. I did. His voice changed, less pleading, more teeth. When we get home, we're going to talk about this like adults. And you're going to make it right. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Actions have consequences, Dad. Finally, I said, letting air into the word. On that point, we agree. I ended the call before he could wedge a last guilt hook under my ribs. The apartment hummed in the after silence. Outside, Forest Hills was doing its clockwork. Dog walkers, garbage trucks, the faint clang of the Q46 groaning toward Union Turnpike. I washed my plate, dried it, put it away. Then I opened the bottom drawer of the desk, where I keep the files that cut different kinds of wood. Taxes, mortgage, insurance, and a card embossed with Cho and Stein. LLP in tasteful serif. I hadn't called Adrian Cho in over a year, not since he'd shepherded me through updating beneficiaries after Elena's memorial. He'd been patient then, meticulous. He'd also looked me in the eye in a way I appreciate, the way that says, I will tell you the truth even when you don't like it. He picked up on the second ring. Martin, it's been a while. I need a consultation, I said. Estate planning, beneficiary review, exit strategies. Exit strategies, he repeated, and I could hear the gears align. You all right? I'm fine, I said, because I was. But my assumptions aren't. I'd like to change a few. He gave me 2:30 p.m. the next day. I spent the hours in between walking the neighborhood Elena loved. The honey cake place on Continental was still there. The old woman, who always pretended not to recognize me, took my $5 for a slice and gave me a corner piece because kindness. On the way home, I passed by the elementary school where Derek once hit a growth spurt so fast his pants looked surprised to be invited to the party. I thought about how often I pulled out my wallet when what he needed was a boundary. I paid for classes, braces, summer programs, first apartment deposits, wedding catering because the budget accidentally doubled, a down payment in Jackson Heights that was only a bridge, and 3 separate emergencies that looked, under a brighter bulb, like ordinary consequences. Back at the apartment, I opened a file labeled Family Support. I am a meticulous man by temperament and training. I had the receipts, transfers, loans that never thickened into repayment, Venmo screenshots for soccer cleats and overnight camps. Last year alone, 41,600. I stacked the pages in one pile. Then I opened a fresh folder and labeled it in block letters, Course Correction. Adrian's office sat on the 12th floor of a glass building in Midtown, with plants no one ever watered in front of an elevator no one ever cleaned. But inside, his conference room might as well have been a clean room, white walls, quiet air, orderly mind. He shook my hand with a pressure that meant business, and made tea without asking. Third detail that told me he listened the first time we met. Tell me what happened, he said. I laid out the sequence with the discipline of an engineer giving a post-mortem, the forgotten ticket. The counteragent's timestamp, the resort cancellation, the messages, Derek's admission about liquidity, his sentence about consequences. I slid over the notes I'd taken verbatim. I did not use adjectives. I didn't need them. Adrian scanned the pages. His mouth flattened a millimeter at the "stop making this about you," then relaxed. You're calm, he said. That matters. I'm done being handled, I said. Good, he said. Then let's handle the paperwork. He opened a template on his screen. You told me last time you wanted Derek to receive the bulk of your estate, with some bequests to causes Elena loved. Music programs, the senior center, the hospital foundation. I did, I said. I don't anymore. What do you want now? Protection, I said. For my wishes. For the money to go where it will do work instead of damage. For Derek to learn a lesson he can't unlearn. We can revise your will, Adrian said, and set up a charitable trust with ironclad language. If you want to exclude Derek, we need to state specific reasons and document your mental capacity at execution to foreclose challenges. Do it, I said. He nodded. Primary beneficiaries? Eleanor taught at PS 144 for 27 years, I said. She bought violins out of her own paycheck so kids could touch Bach. Set aside a major portion for a music in schools fund under her name. Add Queen's College, scholarships for first-generation students in engineering and nursing. The senior center on Yellowstone. And a veterans housing non-profit Elena volunteered with. Adrian typed measured precise. We'll also create a side letter explaining in plain language why Derek is excluded. The court doesn't require it, but judges are people. They appreciate human facts. We'll include your notes and texts as exhibits. And if he threatens to contest, we'll have a video of you reading key provisions and answering questions about your assets, he said. We'll bring a notary and 2 independent witnesses, none of whom are beneficiaries. If he files, we'll file a no-contest clause. If he persists frivolously, the court can penalize him. Good, I said, and the word felt more like a beam seated into a socket than a punctuation mark. He looked up from the keyboard. Martin, one more question. Do you want all contact cut, or a path to reconciliation? I pictured Ava and Noah running into my arms at Sunday dinners, the way Ava buries her face in my sweater and inhales like I smell like safety. I pictured Derek at JFK, eyes already craning toward a horizon where I was not invited. Reconciliation requires repair, I said. I will not bankroll amnesia. Understood, Adrian said. Then we draft accordingly. By the time I rode the elevator back down, the afternoon had turned the city windows into mirrors. I saw a man in the reflection who looked like he'd been told a truth and believed it. On the sidewalk, a bus roared past and a woman laughed into her phone, and a courier threaded through a gap no one else could see. New York did what it always does. It kept moving. So did I. Monday came with a crisp edge, the kind of morning that carries both clarity and consequence. I woke before the alarm, as I always did, but for the first time in months my chest didn't feel like a caved-in mine. I showered, shaved, brewed coffee, and sat by the window where Elena used to read her paper. The city outside moved with its usual mechanical grace. Buses sighed at stops, a cyclist cursed at a cab, and the bakery across the street hoisted its metal shutters. Life punctual as ever. On my desk lay Adrian's email from late last night. Draft complete. Review attached. If approved, we can schedule notarization this week. I opened the file. 22 pages of calm legal thunder. Each clause was a quiet act of rebellion. Each signature line a reclamation of self. It began formally, as these things do. I, Martin Reyes, being of sound mind and memory, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. Then it built, one deliberate paragraph at a time, toward the part that mattered most. I hereby intentionally exclude my son, Derek Reyes, from any and all inheritance from my estate, having determined such exclusion is necessary due to a documented pattern of financial exploitation and emotional coercion. I read that line 3 times, slowly. There it was, truth printed in font size 12 black ink, no tremor, no apology. If words could stand in court and testify, this one would do it proudly. By 10 a.m. I was at Adrian's office again, this time ready to sign what couldn't be unsaid. Morning. Martin, Adrian greeted, rising from behind his desk. You look lighter. Lighter feels accurate, I said. Weight redistributed, he smiled. We'll make this official today. 2 witnesses, 1 notary, 1 recording. Clean and unassailable. The conference room had changed slightly since my last visit. The blinds were open wider now, sunlight falling across polished walnut like the beginning of a new chapter. 2 staff members waited, Mrs. O'Neill, Adrian's longtime assistant, and a paralegal named James. On the table sat a sleek camera tripod aimed squarely at my chair. Ready? Adrian asked. Ready, I said, settling in. The procedure was methodical, almost ceremonial. He read aloud the essential parts while the camera blinked its small red light. Proof that I understood every decision, every omission. "Mr. Reyes," he said, "do you understand that by signing this document, you are disinheriting your son, Derek Reyes?" "I do." "And you're doing so of your own free will without coercion?" "Completely," he continued. "Do you understand that your primary beneficiaries will be the Elena Reyes Memorial Music Fund, Queens College Scholarship Foundation, the Yellowstone Senior Services Program, and the Veterans Housing Initiative?" "Yes," I said. "Those causes will make something good grow from what's been poisoned." "Beautifully said," Adrian murmured, writing it down verbatim for the video transcript. I signed each page in firm strokes. Mrs. O'Neill and James followed, witnesses to a man reclaiming agency. Then the notary pressed her embossed seal onto the last page with an audible clunk that felt like closure. "Congratulations," Adrian said, gathering the documents into a leather folder. "You've just built a fortress. If Derek or his wife tries to contest, they'll find nothing but reinforced steel." I exhaled. "Then let them try." He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "Would you like to send them a copy? Some clients prefer a quiet surprise. Others prefer to deliver the message face to face." "Face to face," I said. "I want to see the moment the math hits him." "Then we'll prepare certified duplicates," Adrian said. "One for you, one for him, one filed with the court. I'll courier them by week's end." I left the office feeling taller, not younger. No document could roll back years, but steadier. My spine felt like rebar. On Lexington Avenue, the city's chaos sounded less like noise and more like applause. The next few days unfolded with peaceful precision. I didn't answer Derek's calls, 56 of them by now, most unanswered, all logged. I didn't respond to Lena's texts filled with emojis that tried to disguise panic as politeness. I spent mornings reading Elena's old gardening journals, afternoons reorganizing the garage, evenings listening to Coltrane records she'd loved. For once, the quiet wasn't lonely. It was restorative. Wednesday evening I met with Adrian one last time. He handed me a sealed envelope, the official certified copy of my will, and a second smaller one with his card clipped to it. "In case of any confrontation," he said, "just hand this to me and say nothing more." "I'll handle it." "They come back Friday," I said, 3 weeks after leaving me at the airport. He studied me for a moment. "You're sure you want to confront them yourself?" "Yes," I said simply. "They left me standing alone in a terminal. It's fitting they see me standing tall in another." Friday arrived with the kind of blue sky perfection that mocks tension. I ironed a fresh shirt, packed the documents into a slim leather folio, and drove to JFK's international arrivals with time to spare. The terminal was a carousel of reunions, laughing families, teary hugs, duty-free bags clinking with liquor bottles. None of it touched me. Adrian arrived 10 minutes later, crisp as ever, his suit a color between midnight and steel. "You sure about this?" he asked, sliding on sunglasses. "Absolutely." "Then let's make it count." He stood beside me, briefcase in hand, as the arrival board flashed. Flight SQ-25 landed. Within minutes, the crowd thickened near the sliding doors. Business travelers emerged first, phones already glued to ears. Then came honeymooners with flower crowns, retirees with cameras, families juggling sleep-deprived toddlers. And then I saw them. Lena appeared first, wrangling Ava and Noah, her once relaxed beach hair frizzed into a halo of stress. The kids wore matching Bali 2025 t-shirts, souvenirs of a paradise that hadn't quite worked out. Ruth followed, her face stretched into a forced smile, pulling 2 overstuffed bags that screamed airport chaos. Then Derek, tanned, tired, still wearing the same straw hat he'd bragged about getting in Seminyak. His eyes were on his phone, typing furiously, until Ava's shout split the noise. "Grandpa!" She dropped her stuffed dolphin and sprinted toward me, Noah tumbling after. I knelt, bracing for impact, as they wrapped around me in a tangle of limbs and warmth. "Grandpa, we missed you," Ava said. "The hotel was weird." "Daddy said—" "Ava," Lena interrupted sharply. "Come here, sweetheart." But Noah piped up anyway. "We slept in the airport." Derek finally looked up. The moment he saw me standing there, upright, calm, flanked by Adrian, his smile froze. "Dad," he said, stepping forward, "what are you doing here?" "Welcoming you home," I said evenly. "How was Bali?" He blinked, his mouth opening, closing, recalculating. It was fine. Expensive, but fine. I imagine so, I said. Hotels cost more when you're paying last minute. Behind him, Lena's hand tightened on her carry-on. Martin, she said softly, can we talk somewhere private? Adrian stepped forward before I could answer. Mr. and Mrs. Reyes, he said, voice carrying the calm weight of authority. My name is Adrian Cho, attorney for Mr. Martin Reyes. Derek's head snapped toward him. Attorney? What? Adrian held out the sealed envelope with two hands. This is a certified copy of your father's revised last will and testament, executed and notarized 3 days ago. The noise of the terminal, announcements, rolling suitcases, the dull roar of human motion seemed to vanish. Derek took the envelope like it was radioactive. He tore the seal, skimmed the first page, then the next, eyes darting faster, his tan paling under fluorescent light. This says I'm excluded, he stammered. This can't be. It's binding, Adrian said. California law upholds a testator's right to distribute assets as they see fit. Your father's documentation includes full mental competency verification and recorded statements. Lena snatched a glance at the papers. Martin, please, she whispered, think about the children. Don't punish them for... I am thinking about the children, I said calmly. That's why the Elena Reyes Memorial Fund will provide scholarships for children who need help. Children whose parents don't use family as a stepping stone. Dad, you can't do this, Derek said, voice cracking. I'm your son. Yes, I said. And you treated me like luggage you didn't want to check. People were watching now, travelers pausing mid-stride, baggage carts rolling slower, eyes flicking between us like we were a live performance in moral arithmetic. Derek's voice rose. You cancelled our hotel. You stranded us in a foreign country. I paid for that hotel, I said. I was simply reclaiming what was mine. He looked around wildly, as if hoping someone, anyone, would step in and rewrite reality for him. You're insane. You're going to regret this. Adrian's tone sharpened. Mr. Reyes, I advise you not to repeat threats in public. My client has documented previous ones. Lena's eyes brimmed with tears that might have been real, or might have been the last weapon in her arsenal. Martin, please. We made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. Yes, I said quietly. And sometimes mistakes have clauses. Ava tugged on Derek's sleeve. Daddy, are we in trouble? He didn't answer. Couldn't. His gaze dropped to the papers again, to the words that turned his lifetime of entitlement into ash. Behind him, Ruth's husband Ben was already reading over his shoulder, eyebrows climbing as he reached the disinheritance section. I leaned closer to Derek so only he could hear me. You told me actions have consequences. You were right. For the first time in years, he had no comeback. Adrian closed his briefcase with a satisfying click. Mr. and Mrs. Reyes, our business here is concluded. Any further communication should go through my office. He extended his hand toward me. Ready to go, Martin? Yes, I said, taking it. We turned toward the terminal doors. Behind us, I heard Lena's voice break. What are we supposed to tell the kids? And Derek's answer, thin as paper. I don't know. The automatic doors whooshed open and cold air met me like baptism. 3 weeks ago, those same doors had swallowed me in humiliation. Now they opened onto freedom. Adrian exhaled beside me. That, he said, was one of the most elegantly executed reckonings I've ever seen. Justice, I said, is just math with empathy removed. That night, back in Forest Hills, the apartment was quiet except for the tick of Elena's old clock and the low hum of the fridge. I poured a small glass of whiskey I'd been saving since her birthday, sat in my chair by the window, and watched the city lights blink like patient stars. On the shelf above the desk, the sealed copy of my will sat beside Elena's photo. I raised the glass toward her picture. To you, love, I said softly, and to lessons learned the hard way. Then I drank slowly, deliberately, as the night folded around me. Not heavy this time, but honest. The future, at last, was mine again. Saturday morning dawned in a hush. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask for anything. It just sits with you. I woke early, as always. Old habits from a life of discipline don't retire just because you do. Coffee brewed in the kitchen. The same percolator Elena used. Its faint hiss and sputter somehow more comforting than any luxury espresso machine. Outside, a soft winter rain slicked the streets of Forest Hills, turning the bare trees into mirrors. I liked mornings like this, Ordinary patient without the artificial excitement of vacations or family bonding trips. I sat at my desk, opened the blinds, and let the grey light in. The folder labelled Estate Final lay to my left, sealed now. To my right, another folder, and this one new, labelled simply Letters. Inside were 2 envelopes, one addressed to Derek Reyes, one to Ava and Noah Reyes. I'd spent half the night writing them. The one for Derek began like this. Son, you've always been clever, but cleverness without conscience is a dangerous inheritance. You believed kindness was a resource that couldn't run out. You mistook love for obligation. This was your final miscalculation. I don't hate you. I don't even wish you harm. But I do want you to understand what you lost, and why you lost it. I stopped there. The rest could wait. Some words are better left folded until time humbles the reader. The kid's letter was different. Short, simple, and free of bitterness. Ava and Noah, life will teach you that money can buy many things, except decency. Don't inherit resentment. Inherit curiosity. Love your parents, but learn from their mistakes. Remember that Grandpa always believed you could grow into better people than the ones who came before you. I sealed both envelopes and placed them atop the folder like gravestones over an old story. By noon, I decided to take a walk. Queens Boulevard glistened from the drizzle, storefronts reflecting neon puddles of color. The bakery woman waved at me from behind the fogged glass, the same smile she'd offered me since Elena was alive. I waved back. At the corner, a young father hoisted his toddler onto his shoulders, pointing out a yellow cab like it was a parade float. The child laughed. That sharp, unfiltered joy only the very young can manage. It made me smile. Then it made me ache. I wondered how long it would take before Derek realized what he'd done, how far betrayal echoes when it's quiet. When I got home, a voicemail blinked on the machine, the old landline again. I still refused to replace it. Real conversations deserved a chord. I pressed play. Dad, it's me. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but please. We need to talk. She's furious, the kids are confused, and Lena's, thinking of taking them to stay with her sister for a bit. Everything's falling apart. You made your point, okay? Just, can we fix this? Please, the line went quiet. I could hear his breathing for a moment, the sound of a man rehearsing regret. Then the click. I didn't delete it. I didn't call back either. Some messages aren't meant to be answered. They're meant to echo. Sunday. The newspaper headline caught my eye. Local foundation receives anonymous $1 million endowment. The photo showed the director of the Queen's youth music program holding a check, eyes wide. I smiled. Adrian had moved faster than expected. The Elena Reyes Memorial Fund, real now. Breathing. Children with second-hand violins would tune strings paid for by justice. I imagined Elena somewhere between laughter and scolding. She'd probably say, "You didn't have to make such a production of it. Marty," and then softer, "But I'm proud of you." Monday morning brought another ring of the phone. Not Derek this time, but Adrian. "Morning, Martin," he said. "I thought you'd want to know. Simon and Cobra's family law just called our office. Derek's already spoken to an attorney." I sipped my coffee. "Of course he has. What's his argument?" "That you were manipulated or mentally unfit when you signed your will," Adrian said flatly. "But they won't get far. We've already filed the video deposition, notarized transcripts, and the physician's attestation. You're bulletproof." "Good," I said. "Let him try. Every hour he spends fighting me will be another hour he has to think about why." Adrian hesitated before speaking again. "Are you sure you don't want mediation? Sometimes it helps family find middle ground." "I don't want middle ground," I said. "I want clean ground." He paused, not to argue, but to understand. "Then you already have it." That afternoon, a knock sounded at my door. For a second, I expected it to be Derek. But when I opened it, it was Ruth, my sister, standing there with an umbrella dripping on the doormat. "Can I come in?" she asked. Her eyes said she already knew what had happened. Maybe Lena had called her. Maybe Derek had. News like that travels fast. Scandal moves quicker than blood. I stepped aside. "Coffee?" She nodded, slipping off her coat. The silence between us was the kind that carries decades. Shared dinners. Shared funerals, shared family disappointments. Finally, she said, "He's unraveling, you know, Derek. I've never seen him this shaken." "He's had it easy for a long time," I said. The fall always looks steeper when you've been carried most of the way up, she sighed. He's still your son, I'm aware, and the kids, they adore you. This whole thing will scar them. Maybe, I said quietly, but so would growing up thinking it's okay to use people. Ruth studied me for a long moment. You've changed, she said finally. You sound settled. I am, she smiled sadly. Eleanor would have liked this version of you. The one who finally stopped apologizing for existing. When she left, she squeezed my hand and said nothing else. But her eyes said what her mouth didn't. You did what I never could. That evening I sat in my armchair, a gentle fatigue curling through my bones. Not exhaustion, just peace. The city's hum seeped through the window screens. I thought about Derek, probably sitting in his lawyer's office rehearsing outrage, about Lena pacing, about the kids, asking questions that deserved better answers than they'd get. Somewhere in the space between guilt and relief, I found something like closure. Elena once told me, justice isn't about punishment. Marty, it's about restoration. I used to think that meant forgiveness. Now I know it can also mean correction, restoring the balance between what's given and what's taken. I picked up the last envelope, Derek's letter, and slipped it into the outgoing mail pile. It wasn't venom. It was record-keeping. The truth, signed and sealed. Then I turned off the lights, leaving only the glow of the lamp by Elena's photograph. Her eyes still looked kind. Mine, maybe for the first time in years, looked the same. The next morning, the mailman whistled as he passed my window. I watched him drop Derek's letter into the blue box across the street. It was gone now, carried off into the machinery of consequence. The rest, as they say, would take care of itself. For the first time in a long time, I didn't plan what came next. I didn't need to. Some stories don't end with fireworks. They end with silence, the peaceful kind that only follows truth. The following week passed in slow, deliberate time, like life was exhaling after holding its breath too long. I kept to my routines, morning walks to the corner cafe, afternoon reading in the small park behind the library, evenings spent with Elena's old records and a pot of chamomile tea. But beneath that calm, a quiet current moved, one I couldn't ignore. When you've spent your life calculating systems, you learn to sense pressure before it breaks the surface, and I could feel Derek's pressure building. By Wednesday, it arrived in the form of a letter, thick, official, stamped certified mail. I carried it to the kitchen table like it was an old ghost, set it down, and studied it before opening, from Simon and Kerber Family Law. Subject, Notice of Intent to Contest Will. The language was cold, clinical, but I knew the fear underneath it wasn't. Our client, Mr. Derek Reyes, hereby notifies your office of his intent to challenge the validity of the last will and testament of Mr. Martin Reyes, executed on May 28, 2025, on grounds of undue influence and diminished capacity. I smiled, of course. When control slips through some people's fingers, they don't accept loss, they litigate it. I called Adrian. Got the letter? He asked even before I said hello. I did. Don't worry, it's procedural, he said. They have no case. We'll file a motion to dismiss, along with the video and notarized statements. Once the judge sees you on record, lucid, detailed, composed, they'll drop it. Derek's just trying to scare you into negotiation. He's always thought fear was currency, I said. It's what he used when love stopped working. Adrian chuckled softly. You're handling this better than most people I've seen. I stopped being surprised by who my son is, I said. That's the first step toward peace. Still, when night fell, I found myself pacing the living room. There's a peculiar grief in realizing you raised someone who would rather fight you in court than apologize. Elena's portrait hung above the mantel, eyes soft, mouth tilted in that half-smile that used to melt my temper in seconds. What would you do? I asked the photo. If she'd been here, she'd probably have told me to stop replaying it all in my head. She would have made me tea, squeezed my hand and said, some lessons come late, but they still count. And maybe that was enough. I slept eventually, not well, but enough. By Friday, the rain had given way to clear skies. I was watering the window plants when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw him, Derek. He looked older than I remembered, not in the way time makes us old, but in the way consequence does. His once perfect hair was disheveled, his shirt rumpled, the faint shadow of exhaustion under his eyes. For a moment I saw a flash of the boy he'd been, tall for his age, brilliant, reckless, desperate to impress me. But then I remembered the airport. And the $20,000. And the text message that ended with, "Take care of yourself." I opened the door halfway. "Dad," he said, "please, I just want to talk." "You've got 10 minutes, I said, voice steady. "And not one word about lawyers." He nodded quickly, stepping inside. He didn't take off his shoes. Elena would have scolded him for that. He stood in the middle of the living room, hands twisting. "You look good," he said, as if complimenting my health could rewind betrayal. "Say what you came to say," I replied. He swallowed hard. "I made a mistake, okay? We made a mistake. Lena, the kids, me. The trip, it got complicated. We thought maybe it'd be easier if I disappeared quietly." I finished for him. His eyes dropped to the floor. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Derek?" "You bought 4 tickets, not 5. You took my money, my excitement, and left me standing at an airport like lost baggage. You called that what? Easier?" "I panicked," he said. "I thought maybe you'd slow us down or embarrass you," I said sharply. He flinched. "Dad, no," I said. "You're going to finish the sentence. You thought I'd embarrass you in front of your perfect little family vacation. That's what this was, wasn't it?" The silence between us said everything words couldn't. He rubbed his face. "I didn't expect you to cancel the hotel." "That was cruel, cruel," I repeated, tasting the word. "You don't get to lecture me about cruelty. You left me behind. You took my money. You lied for weeks. You called me old man and told me I'd regret standing up for myself. You want cruelty? That's cruelty." His voice cracked. "I'm trying to fix this." "No," I said softly. "You're trying to fix your comfort." "There's a difference." He exhaled shakily, shoulders sinking. "What do you want me to do then?" "Beg? Apologize? I'm sorry, all right? I'm sorry I handled things wrong. But this disinheriting me, this is too far." I studied him for a moment. "No, Derek, it's exactly far enough." He blinked, like he couldn't comprehend the finality in my tone. "You'd really rather give everything to strangers than your own son?" "They're not strangers," I said. "They're the children of people who work hard and ask for nothing. They're the kind of people your mother and I used to be, before we forgot what it cost to earn something." He looked around the room, maybe hoping to find a crack in me somewhere, a photograph, a memory, a weakness he could use. His eyes landed on Elena's picture. "She'd never agree with this," he said. I smiled sadly. "You didn't know your mother as well as you think." That silenced him. I walked to the door and opened it. 10 minutes are up." He stood there, torn between pride and desperation. "If you go through with this, you'll die alone, you know that?" I met his eyes. "No, son. I'll die at peace." He froze, jaw trembling, then turned and left without another word. The sound of the door closing behind him echoed through the apartment like a punctuation mark, sharp, final, necessary. That night, the quiet felt different. Not hollow anymore, just clean. I poured myself a small glass of red wine and sat by the window. Outside, the city hummed. Traffic, laughter. Someone's music bleeding through the open summer air. Life kept moving, as it should. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Adrian. "Update. Derek's attorney has withdrawn. Case dismissed. No further action required." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I laughed, quietly but fully. Justice had a way of circling back, patient as gravity. I raised my glass toward Eleanor's picture again. "Oh well, love," I said. "I guess we finished what we started." Her smile, frozen in time, had seemed to soften under the lamplight. And for the first time since that airport terminal, I felt something that had been missing for years. Not victory, not revenge. Freedom. 2 weeks later, the world outside my apartment looked softer, as if someone had dialed the sharpness down just a little. The air smelled of wet concrete and lilacs from the planters downstairs. The city had entered that brief, forgiving phase between seasons, where even the noise of delivery trucks and subway brakes couldn't quite ruin the peace. I wasn't counting days anymore. For the first time in years, time wasn't something to survive. It was something to fill. That morning I brewed coffee and opened the window just enough to let in a breeze. My phone was face down on the counter, not because I was waiting for a call, but because I wasn't. A new letter had arrived the day before, not from Derek. Thankfully, but from the Queen's Youth Music Foundation. They'd sent a photo of their first group of scholarship students. 10 kids grinning wide, each holding a second-hand violin or cello, their names handwritten in blue ink below. At the bottom of the letter in looping script, "Your generosity has already changed lives, Mr. Reyes. The Elena Reyes Music Room will open next month." I sat there for a long time, staring at that photo. Eleanor would have cried, then laughed through the tears. Then probably reminded me to check that the instruments were properly tuned. It hit me. That joy didn't have to come from family anymore. It could come from the echo of something you built. Later that day, I decided to drive to the cemetery. It wasn't a sentimental urge, more like a need to take attendance. Elena's headstone sat beneath a young maple, the kind that spills dapples of sunlight across the grass like coins. The inscription was simple because that's what she wanted. Elena Reyes, 1954-2022. She made things grow. I brushed a few fallen leaves from the marble and sat down on the bench nearby. "Well," I said quietly, "you were right again." A squirrel darted across the path, stopped, stared, and went back to its business. "You always said kindness needed structure, not sacrifice." Took me 68 years to figure out the difference. A breeze rippled through the trees, and for a moment it really did feel like she was there. Not as memory, but as atmosphere. I took the folded letter from my pocket, the one from the foundation, and read it aloud, word for word. "I thought you'd like to know, love," I said, tucking it beside the flowers. "Your name's hanging in a classroom again. When I returned home, there was a package waiting outside my door, no sender listed. I carried it inside carefully, set it on the table, and slit it open. Inside were 3 items: a drawing in crayon, 2 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow, a photograph of Ava and Noah smiling beside a handmade sign that said, "We love you, Grandpa," and a note written in Derek's handwriting, shaky and uneven. "Dad, I've spent the last few weeks replaying everything. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not even sure I deserve it. But I want you to know, I see it now. What I did at the airport wasn't a mistake. It was cruelty. You didn't just lose a trip. You lost respect from your own son, and that's worse. I'm sorry. The kids ask about you every night. They miss you. If you ever want to see them, the door's open. No strings, no expectations. Just family." Derek, I read it 3 times, then set it down beside the coffee cup. For a long time, I didn't know what I felt. Anger didn't fit anymore. Neither did forgiveness. What filled the space instead was something quieter: recognition. Sometimes people don't change because they're punished. They change because the silence finally gets too loud. That night, I sat at my desk and took out a new sheet of paper. I wrote, "Derek, I received your note. Thank you for sending it." The photo made me smile. "The drawing will stay on my fridge. I don't know what rebuilding looks like yet, but maybe we can start small. Dinner next week, just you and me. No lawyers. No apologies. Just truth." I signed it, folded it, and sealed it before I could overthink. When I dropped it into the mailbox outside my building, I realized my hands weren't shaking. Not from anger. Not from regret. Just something that felt suspiciously like peace. A week later, Derek showed up at my door again, this time in a pressed shirt, carrying a grocery bag instead of excuses. "Thought I'd cook," he said. "Mom's lasagna recipe." I had to call Aunt Ruth to remember half of it. The smell that filled the apartment as it baked was pure memory. Tomato, basil, and the faint sweetness of the past trying to make amends. We ate quietly at first, the way people do when they're afraid to breathe too loud. Then the conversation started, hesitant, clumsy, but real. We didn't talk about the airport. We didn't talk about the money. We just talked about Ava's piano lessons, about Noah's obsession with dinosaurs, about how Lena was trying to fix things in her own way. When he left, he paused at the door. "Dad," he said softly, "thank you for giving me another chance." I nodded. "Just don't waste it." That night, as I stood by the window, I realized something strange. Forgiveness isn't a door you walk through once. It's a hinge you oil every day, hoping it keeps moving. Elena used to say, closure isn't the end of something. It's the point you stop running from it. I smiled. Maybe she was right again. Outside, the rain had returned, soft and rhythmic, tapping against the glass like applause. The city glowed. The plants by the window leaned toward the light, and for the first time in years so did I. Summer deepened. Queens smelled like rain on pavement, and street vendors frying onions by the subway entrances. The city pulsed with heat, impatience, and, in some small corner of it, reconciliation. Derek started visiting on Sundays. Not every week, not with fanfare, but enough that the space between us began to resemble something living again instead of a scar. The first time he brought Ava and Noah, they stood awkwardly in the doorway, unsure if the rules had changed. Then Noah spotted the small jar of seashells I'd kept from our last trip to Cape Cod, the one before everything fractured, and his eyes lit up. "Grandpa, are these from the ocean?" "Yes," I said. "I collected them with your dad when he was about your age." Ava tilted her head. "You mean when Daddy was nice?" Derek winced. I almost smiled. Kids have no filters. They just say the quiet truth out loud. I crouched down to her level. "Your dad's always been nice," I said gently. "Sometimes adults just forget how to show it." She looked at me for a long moment, as if deciding whether to believe me. Then she nodded and ran off to the living room to stack the shells like puzzle pieces. Derek watched them for a while before he spoke. "You didn't have to say that." "I know," I said, "but she needed to hear it. And so did you." Over the next few months, those visits became routine. Sometimes they brought groceries. Sometimes they just brought noise. The good kind, the kind that fills the house in the right places. Lena started coming too. Cautious at first, overly polite, offering to wash dishes after dinner like a peace treaty disguised as courtesy. I let her. One evening, as she dried a plate, she said quietly, "I was wrong about you." I looked up from the sink. "How so?" "You always seemed distant, reserved. I thought it meant you didn't care enough." I rinsed the last glass, set it on the rack. "And now?" "Now I think you were just trying not to get in the way." I chuckled. "Well, I failed spectacularly, didn't I?" She smiled, small but genuine. "Maybe that's what we all needed." That fall, the Queen's Youth Music Foundation invited me to their annual recital. They'd named the auditorium the Eleanor Reyes Hall. I almost didn't go, not out of modesty, but because part of me still carried the habit of retreat. Eleanor had been the one who loved events, not me. She could talk to strangers like she'd known them since childhood. But something in me wanted to see what her name had built. When I arrived, the hall was buzzing. Children in neat white shirts tuned violins. Proud parents whispered encouragements. Teachers darted between rows of chairs. And there it was, in a bronze plaque near the entrance. The Elena Reyes Hall. Dedicated to the belief that music, like love, multiplies when shared. I stood there longer than I meant to. It felt like the air itself remembered her laugh. During intermission, a young girl, maybe 11, approached me with a shy smile. "Mr. Reyes?" she asked. "Yes. I just wanted to say thank you. My family couldn't afford lessons before the scholarship. I want to be a music teacher someday, like your wife was." Something in my chest cracked open. "You're already halfway there," I said. When she walked away, Derek appeared beside me. He'd come with the kids, sitting quietly in the back row. "She would have loved this," he said. "She did," I replied. "In her own way, she made this happen." He nodded. "And you made sure she still could." For once, his voice carried no defensiveness, no guilt, just truth. After the concert, we went for ice cream. It wasn't planned. Ava demanded it. Noah backed her up, and I wasn't about to say no. We sat on a park bench, the city's glow bouncing off the wet pavement. Ava's chocolate ice cream dripped faster than she could eat it. Noah was busy explaining how dinosaurs would have loved sprinkles. Derek leaned back, looking at the skyline. "You ever think about how weird it is? That everything went to hell because of a vacation?" I laughed softly. "Vacations don't ruin families, Derek. Entitlement does." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I used to think money solved everything. That as long as I provided, I was doing my job. And now? Now I think providing's easy. Showing up's hard. That's a start," I said. "Your mother used to say showing up fixes most of life's messes." He smiled faintly. "Yes, I'm late to the lesson. Better late than never." When I got home that night, I found myself stopping in the doorway again, same way I had the night after cancelling that cursed hotel booking. But this time the quiet didn't sting. I turned off the lights, letting the apartment glow with what little streetlight came through the curtains. The framed photo of Elena on the mantel caught a glimmer, her eyes alive with mischief, as if she was still in on a joke I hadn't quite understood yet. "You'd like how this turned out," I murmured. "Even if you'd tell me I took the scenic route getting here." The city hummed below. The clock ticked softly. Somewhere outside, someone laughed, a sound bright enough to slip through the walls, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was living alone. I was living forward. Winter came gently that year, the kind that dusts the city in soft white before melting away by noon. From my window, the rooftops of Forest Hills looked like they'd been brushed with powdered sugar, and for the first time in decades, I didn't mind the cold. The radiator hissed, the coffee steamed, and the house, when once a monument to silence, now carried new sounds. Laughter, dishes clinking, music from the small radio I kept by the stove. Derek had started visiting regularly, not out of guilt anymore, but something closer to gratitude. Sometimes he came alone, sometimes with the kids, occasionally with Lena, and every time the air felt less heavy. It was late December when I got the call from the foundation. "Mr. Reyes," said a bright young voice, "we're planning a winter recital for the students. Would you like to attend? Maybe even say a few words?" I hesitated. Public speaking had never been my strength. Elena had always been the one who stood in front of crowds with warmth that melted every room. But after a moment I said yes. "Wonderful," the girl said. "It would mean so much to the students." On the evening of the recital, I dressed in my best suit, the charcoal grey one Elena had chosen years ago for our 30th anniversary dinner. It still fit miraculously. I could almost hear her teasing me. "See? Told you to lay off the bagels." The hall was beautiful that night. Snow fell softly outside the windows, and the stage lights glowed gold on polished instruments. Parents murmured in excitement. Kids fidgeted in their seats, and somewhere near the front I saw Derek helping Ava and Noah unwrap their coats. They spotted me and waved. My heart did that strange quiet ache that comes only from being loved after nearly losing it. When the foundation director took the stage, she gave a short speech about generosity, legacy, and music's power to heal. Then she called me up. The applause that followed was polite and terrifying. I stood at the podium, adjusted the microphone, and took a breath. "I wasn't sure I'd have anything worth saying tonight," I began, and a few people chuckled gently. "But I suppose the best stories aren't about what we say. They're about what we learn." I glanced toward the audience, where Derek sat with the kids, their faces tilted toward me like open pages. My wife, Elena, believed in small things done with great care. She taught for nearly 3 decades, and she used to tell me music isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up over and over, until the sound feels like home. I didn't understand what she meant until recently. I used to think family was something you kept by giving more money, more help, more chances. But sometimes keeping love alive means drawing a line and saying, "This far, no further," because love without respect is just habit. "And respect," I said, letting the words settle, "is what makes a family worth saving." There was silence. Then applause, not loud but warm, the kind that wraps around you like a blanket instead of a spotlight. Afterward, Ava came running up to me, violin case bouncing against her knees. "Grandpa, did you see me play? I didn't mess up once." "You were wonderful," I said, kneeling to hug her. "You have your grandmother's hands." Derek joined us, looking proud and a little emotional. "You really meant what you said up there, didn't you?" he asked quietly. "Every word," he nodded. "You were right, you know. Love without respect doesn't last." I learned that the hard way. "Most of us do," I said. For a while, we just stood there, father and son, not adversaries, not strangers, just 2 men learning how to share silence without it being painful. The next few months unfolded with an ease I hadn't known in years. We started a Sunday tradition, homemade dinners alternating between my apartment and Derek's house. Sometimes the meals were simple, roast chicken, salad, coffee afterward, while the kids watched cartoons. Other times Lena went all out. Lasagna, wine, fresh bread, the kind of meals that make you linger at the table long after the plates are empty. We talked more too, not about the past. That part had already done its teaching, but about everything else: work, aging, how fast the kids were growing, what happiness looks like when it's earned. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever is. But it was honest, and that was enough. One afternoon in March, Derek and I went through Elena's old photo albums together. He pointed to a picture of her sitting on the porch in a sun hat, laughing at something I'd said. "She looks so alive here," he whispered. "She was," I said. "Your mother didn't waste life waiting for permission to be happy." He turned the page. "I think I'm finally starting to understand her." "That's good," I said. "She'd like that." He smiled faintly. "You ever think she'd forgive me?" I looked at him, really looked. She already did. That's why I had to learn how. When he left that evening, the apartment felt different again and lighter somehow. The same walls, the same furniture, the same ticking clock, yet it all felt repainted by peace. I made tea and sat by the window as the first buds of spring clung to the trees outside. It struck me, then, how far we'd all come, not through money or revenge, but through the slow rebuilding of trust, one quiet act at a time. Somewhere out there, a piano was being tuned in the Elena Reyes Hall, and a little girl I'd never met was playing her first scales on a violin that existed because of my wife's name. Derek had come back, humbled but whole. The kids were learning the difference between giving and taking. And me? I was finally learning how to let peace be louder than pain. I turned off the lamp, let the city lights spill across the room, and whispered to the photo on the mantel, "You were right again, love." The music really did bring them home. Spring bled into summer with that familiar New York rhythm, long daylight hours, the distant thrum of air conditioners, the occasional bark of laughter from the street below. But inside my apartment, the pace of life had changed completely. No longer slow because of loneliness, but deliberate because of choice. The house was alive again, not with chaos. I'd had enough of that in my lifetime, but with warmth. Ava and Noah had started calling every few days just to talk, their calls full of stories about school and friends, and the small discoveries that make childhood infinite. Lena texted pictures, new recipes, family dinners, moments where everyone looked so normal it almost hurt. And Derek? He came by every Sunday morning, always with something to fix. A cabinet hinge, a flickering light bulb, once a creaky window. He never said, "I'm here because I want to be." But I could see it in the way he lingered after the job was done, in the way he refilled my coffee cup without asking. We never really talked about the will again. We didn't need to. Some conversations are already carved in stone. One Sunday in May, he brought a box of old Super 8 reels. "Found these in Mom's closet," he said. "Thought maybe we could try to watch them. Kids have never seen any home movies." I hesitated, then nodded. "Projector's still in the hall closet. Haven't touched it in years," he smiled. "Then it's time." We set up the machine in the living room that afternoon, the curtains drawn, the air thick with nostalgia and dust. The projector hummed to life, casting a soft flicker onto the blank wall. The first reel showed Elena in the backyard, hair tied up, laughing as she tried to chase toddler Derek through the sprinkler. The second was a Christmas morning, the kind where everything shimmered with wrapping paper and joy. And then, one clip that took my breath away, Elena at the piano, Derek sitting beside her, maybe 10 years old. They were playing together, clumsy, off-key but radiant. When the music stopped, she turned to the camera, to me, and said, "If he ever forgets how to listen, remind him where he learned it." The film clicked and spun into silence. Derek sat perfectly still beside me, the only sound in the room the faint whir of the projector fan. "She really said that," he whispered. "She did." He rubbed his eyes, trying to hide it, but there was no hiding. "I think I finally hear her, Dad." I smiled faintly. "Good. Took you long enough." Later that evening, we went for a walk. The air smelled of rain and lilac again, the same as the day everything began to change. We didn't talk much, didn't need to. Some silences are heavy. This one was full. We stopped by the small playground where I used to take Derek when he was Ava's age. A couple of kids were swinging, the chains creaking softly. Derek watched them, then said, "You know, for a long time I thought love was a transaction. You give something, you get something. I thought you'd always be there to balance the equation." "That's not love," I said gently. "That's accounting." He laughed quietly. "Yeah, guess I learned that the hard way." We watched the kids a moment longer. Then he said, "I'm proud of you, Dad, for everything, especially for not giving up on me." I looked at him. My son, older now but not hardened, finally open, finally present. "I didn't do it for you," I said. I did it because your mother wouldn't have forgiven me if I didn't, he smiled. Then I guess we both owe her. The next weekend, the foundation held its summer fundraiser, an open-air concert in Central Park. The Elena Reyes Hall students performed on a temporary stage, their music carrying across the green like sunlight. When Ava walked up with her violin, I felt something shift, a circle closing. She played Clair de Lune. Not perfectly, but beautifully. Halfway through, she looked up from the music stand and smiled right at me. And in that moment, the hush between notes, the breeze threading through the trees, I swear I felt Elena there. Not as memory, not as grief, but as presence. When the applause came, I clapped until my palms stung. That night back home, I sat at the desk in my study, the same desk where I'd once signed away $20,000 and then, months later, rewritten the future. The same desk where I'd planned my revenge and found my redemption. Now, it held something new, a single blank sheet of paper. At the top, I wrote to my family, "When I'm gone, you'll find the rest of this letter in the safe with my will. Don't look for instructions. There aren't any. Just understand this. The money, the property, the paperwork, none of it ever mattered. The lesson did. You can lose everything and still win yourself back. You can break something and still fix it if you start with truth. And you can always come home, but only after you've learned how to stay." I folded the paper, placed it in an envelope, and slipped it into the safe beside the legal documents. Then I closed the drawer, exhaled and whispered into the quiet, "Good night, love." It's all in tune again. Outside, the city breathed, a siren in the distance, laughter from the street, a faint hum of life continuing, and in that moment, I realized that sometimes the greatest justice isn't revenge, or even victory, it's harmony. By autumn, life had settled into a rhythm that felt both new and strangely familiar. The trees in Forest Hills turned gold, then amber, then let go altogether, an elegant kind of surrender I had come to understand deeply. The days were quieter now, but not empty. Every morning, I'd walk to the cafe on 71st Avenue, order the same black coffee Elena used to tease me about. "You drink bitterness like it's a hobby." Then I'd sit by the window, notebook open, sketching designs for little projects, a new bookshelf, a bird feeder, a wooden frame for the foundation's next recital poster. Not because I needed to build anything, but because building was how I prayed. It was a Thursday when Derek called. His voice sounded lighter than it had in years. "Dad, we're planning something for your birthday next week," he said. "Small dinner, just us and the kids. I promise no surprises." I laughed softly. "I think I've had my quota of surprises from you." He chuckled too, but there was warmth in it this time and not defense. "Fair enough. But we thought maybe you'd like to host at your place. The kids say your lasagna beats Mom's, and that's a dangerous claim to make, so you'll have to prove it." I agreed, not out of obligation, but because the idea of them here, the smell of garlic, the sound of laughter, the way Ava's giggle fills every quiet corner, felt like sunlight returning after a long winter. The following Saturday, I stood in the kitchen wearing my old apron, its faded print reading Elena's sous chef. Ava helped me layer pasta and sauce, her hair tied up with one of Lena's ribbons. Noah sat at the table, carefully grating cheese like it was a sacred task. And Derek was washing dishes without being asked. At one point I looked around and realized that this was it. Not the revenge, not the justice, not even the foundation or the applause. This was what I'd been chasing all along. A room where love didn't come with conditions. Lena poured wine. The kids set the table, and for once dinner felt like what it should have been years ago. Easy, human, alive. After we ate, Ava pulled out her violin. "Grandpa, I learned something new. Wanna hear?" I nodded, and she began playing a soft, hesitant tune, one I recognized instantly. It was Clair de Lune again, smoother this time, confident where it used to tremble. And when she finished, she said, "Daddy helped me practice every night." Derek smiled, and proud but humble. "She's got Mum's ear for rhythm." I caught his gaze across the table. "And her stubbornness," I added. He laughed. "Guess it runs in the family." We all did. Later that night, after they'd gone home and the apartment had returned to its gentle hum, I walked into my study. The desk lamp cast its usual golden pool of light, and in that glow, Everything that once symbolized pain now looked like peace. The estate final folder still sat in the safe, untouched since the day I'd sealed it. Beside it now were new files: foundation grants, scholarship recipients, family photos 2025. Different kind of legacy. I poured myself a small drink, one of the last bottles of wine Elena and I had kept for special occasions. If this wasn't one, nothing was. I raised the glass toward her picture on the mantel. "To you, love," I said softly, "for teaching me that forgiveness isn't weakness, that peace isn't surrender, and that sometimes to bring a family home, you have to let it fall apart first." I took a slow sip. Outside, the wind rattled the last of the leaves against the windows. Down the street, someone was laughing. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything anymore. The next morning, I woke early. No alarm, no reason, just the body's quiet clock. The sky outside was blushing with the first light of dawn. I stepped onto the balcony with my coffee. The air cool and clean, the city half asleep. Somewhere below, a taxi honked. Somewhere far away, church bells started to ring. And in that moment, it hit me how beautifully ordinary everything was. No more anger. No more proving anything to anyone. Just the quiet satisfaction of a man who'd finally done what he was meant to do. Not build an empire or a fortune or a spotless family image, but build peace. That night, as I turned off the lamp beside Elena's chair, I whispered into the stillness, "It's all right now." And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. The story didn't end with applause or punishment. It ended exactly as it should, with music in the background, family close again, and love finally earned the right way, not by buying it, not by begging for it, but by becoming the kind of person who never has to ask for it again.